Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on cloud endpoints and ThinkLine Direct. I'm Slim Besrour, and I'll be moderating today's session. I'm joined by Omar Keshrid, CEO and founder of ThinkLine Direct, who will be leading the main presentation and sharing his insights on endpoint strategy, hardware innovation, and the evolving cloud workspace landscape. We're also joined today by Mohammed Dalayan from Distilogics, our distribution partner in the EMEA, who is also a cybersecurity expert and who will be able to provide some very valuable insight. We're excited to show how our solutions can empower the endpoints your teams use to access VDI, DaaS, and secure browsers. Today we'll focus on 4 key areas. So securing IT endpoints first, simplifying endpoint management second, reducing costs third, and helping your organization operate more efficiently and sustainably. As our name suggests, we aim to be a trusted source for endpoint hardware historically known as ThinkLines, built for modern cloud workspaces. We'll take a quick look at the history of ThinkLines, where they stand today, and then walk you through the benefits and capabilities of what we offer at ThinkLine Direct. Feel absolutely free to ask questions at any time. We want this to be an interactive session, and we'll try to address your questions as they come in. We'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. And with that, let's dive in and explore together how ThinkLine Direct can help you rethink and elevate your endpoint strategy. Here's Omar.
All right, thank you very much, Slim, for that introduction. And I'm very excited to have Mohammed with us on the webinar. It's always a huge value when Mohammed joins, especially on his cybersecurity and technical knowledge. So for those of you that haven't met me, welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thank you for joining us. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Omar Keshrid, and I'm the founder and CEO of ThinkLine Direct. ThinkLine Direct was founded in September of 23, and our focus from the beginning was clear. We want to help organizations get the most out of their endpoint strategy, and specifically for VDI, desktop as a service, and enterprise browsing environments. So people that are connecting to a cloud desktop or application environment, and they don't need anything. They don't need to do anything really locally. They're just doing everything, on a virtual desktop or on a browser, or on a remote application. Before starting ThinkLine Direct, I spent many years distributing and supporting various ThinkLine solutions. I actually, started Distilogics. So Distilogics is a very important partner to us now. They are promoting and helping develop the business for TCD in the Middle East, Africa, and also Europe. And during that time, when I was in distribution and doing ThinkLines, I began to notice some clear gaps in the market, especially when it came to the endpoint side of the equation. VDI and DaaS, as you all know, are comprehensive solutions. They involve Windows systems, virtualization, storage, servers, cloud platforms, and much more. So it's very complicated, and there's a lot of things to carry. And because of that complexity, a lot of partners, from what I noticed, they tended to focus on the infrastructure, and they kind of neglected the actual endpoint piece. And this is not good because this is a key piece to the equation. At the same time, many VDI vendors bring, they're pushing, bring your own device. A lot of the VDI vendors or the DaaS vendors, they're saying, you could connect whatever you want. And while it sounds flexible in theory, in practice, it really creates more problems than it solves. So it introduces security concerns and management challenges, because IT teams are forced to support a huge variety of devices and operating systems. So with that said, I'm going to bring Mohammed into the equation. Have you seen people that use Mohammed BYOD and has that been a success in your experience?
It is, it brings in like a major security challenge because especially with the ones that we call them the COPE or corporate owned, personally operated equipment. And those come with management challenges, but also they present access points to your workload. And the management of these devices is way different from managing the ones that you operate and when you can deploy your policies. I've seen major challenges with those, but they will come with a major growth. But when you were talking, Amar, I remember like a couple of customers. They want to share maybe a brief about what they did. One
Yeah.
of them is a huge mining company in our region, and they had a major compromise, cybersecurity compromise. And what they did, and they were successful in deploying that, is they started using thin clients to replace existing compute and endpoints, and especially those devices that connect to their OT devices, that connect to their automation devices. You don't really need a laptop or a Windows operating system to work with those embedded systems. So what they did is that they replaced many of them with those endpoints, and they simplified the management required to work with these automation devices. But what they did, the biggest thing they achieved is that they reduced their exposure to attacks, because most of the biggest challenge for OT security is remote access. And remote access comes with major challenges. Most of the OT security remote access solutions, they represent just a proxy in the middle that allows two sides to connect. And they don't really come with proper security setup and proper security equipment and tools in place, which leads to having the organization compromise, or I always like to say access points. So you open access points to your workload. So when they deployed these zero clients, they did reduce that exposure nearly to zero. Those, especially if you use Linux hardened devices, that they just process they get the VDI or the operating system through DaaS or through their virtual environment, and they get secure browsers with them. Some of them, they use the concept of rooms, where you get isolated, secure, encrypted rooms within your zero client deployment, and they come with secure browsers, so you already have that security level of interface between the admins and the OT devices. That was a major deployment. It did help them a lot. The other one was an organization that does services in the entire region, and they have lots of employees, like in every country in the region. They've got like 2 people in this country, 3 people there, and 5 people there. And I've seen them changing their end user computing policy, where they don't give employees any laptops anymore. They don't allow employees to connect using their own laptops. So what they do is that they give them thin clients with hardened Linux operating system, and those employees, they get their virtual desktop through the cloud. So it's a DaaS deployment. And wherever you are, whether you are in South Africa, or you're in Nigeria, or in Egypt, or Iraq, or I don't know, in the UAE, it's the same. So you got that small, tiny little device of your zero client. You just plug it in and connect to your Windows, to your monitor and your keyboard, and that's it. You're connected. You get a secure operating system that is hardened with minimal number of applications. Most importantly, the secure browser. with it encrypted that piece of memory within that thin client. And that was a huge mobility shift. It allowed them
Yeah.
to have mobile. Some of them actually, the manager the other day said to me, we even now started having freelancers because we have the ability to limit their access and the risk that they impose in our organization. So yeah, I see a shift in how organizations manage their workforce, especially remote workforce,
Yeah.
especially freelancers, and when they have to deal with field services and all that. So yeah, it's a major shift. End user
Yeah.
computing and endpoint has become the end game. We learned this 10 years ago. We thought that with network security, you can layer up and layer down, security controls, but no, at the end game is the endpoint. If it is secure enough, if your applications that run on those endpoints are secure enough, then your exposure to risk is way less, no matter what you do, when compared to someone that only depends on network controls and security controls.
Yeah. I call it, making the endpoint dumb, where we don't
Yes.
have to worry about, it's one less thing to worry about. And even if you try to set up any, controls on like, let's say a normal Windows environment, there's still things that the user can do, can touch, um, can reach that you don't want them to even have the possibility of doing so. Just get them
Yeah.
to their cloud workspace. Um, but just getting back because we got a little bit ahead of ourselves there. I think we'll come back to those points. But very 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 good points, Mohammed, and very interesting use cases. But that's essentially what we saw, and why we formed Think Line Direct is we saw that a lot of times the whoever was advising on the VDI was not thinking things all the way through in terms of the endpoint. So Thin Client Direct fills the gap. We're a hardware vendor that specializes exclusively in thin clients. Most of the other hardware vendors, they do any kind of PC. Sometimes they do more than PCs. Some of them make everything. And we combine that with a deep expertise, not just in the hardware, but also in the software and overall solution. So when you work with us, we're going to give you a good hardware. Hardware is a commodity. We do it at a good price, but we also help you figure out what is the best solution for your environment, to be efficient, to be secure, to lower energy cost, and so on. So our mission is simple, to be the trusted partner for businesses seeking unbiased, unfiltered advice to improve their endpoint strategy. And again, we do this by delivering a tailored hardware and software solution that simplifies IT management, enhances the user experience, and maximizes efficiency and protects your organizational assets. This image, I like it because it shows you our approach here. We want to design in any project a solution that can support any VDI or DaaS platform, regardless of the peripherals in use, the unified communication tools that you require at your organization, or the security measures that you need to implement. All of this with proper visibility and reporting built in. So we always have an element of being able to measure how things are going. We're deeply familiar with the landscape of solutions and can quickly identify what makes the most sense on the client's specific goals. And also, given the commodity nature of hardware and today's software-defined approach to thin client endpoints, we've carefully selected devices that are both premium but also cost-effective, built for longevity and long-term value. A lot of times when we choose a device, we look at like what is going to be your use case, what are potential ways that your company is going to move, and also a lot of times, what we've noticed is hardware vendors tend to overcharge for certain upgrades that are no-brainers, and that prevents people, or companies from going and making those upgrades. So we just, we're very reasonable, in terms of what we charge for those upgrades. So if, for example, if you can go with 8 gigs of RAM as opposed to 4 gigs, and the cost is minimal over the cost of 10 years, which is what we want you to keep the device for, it makes absolute sense to just go for it right away. So we'll dive into hardware shortly, but the key point here is that choosing the right device is critical to maximizing the lifespan and ROI of your endpoint investment. We then pair the hardware with the ideal software solutions. So it can be, and 90% of the time we try to keep it a Linux-based read-only operating system. Just like we were discussing, you want something that is super hardened, that is only allowing access, and Linux tends to be very lightweight. Or we opt for, if needed, because of certain reasons, such as peripherals and drivers and such, for a version of Windows that is hardened. It could be Windows IoT or regular Windows, but we make sure that it's very hardened, as much as possible and easily manageable. We recommend the best management tools to save your IT time. That's a big part of IT team's work, is to support the endpoints. We want to make that kind of very, very simple. Focus them on the VDI part if they are focusing on the user workspace. And finally, there's additional tools. Oftentimes, if you tell me that for example, you're going for Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, we know some of the limitations that, for example, Linux operating system has. So we can suggest to you, okay, you're going to need these additional tools. Or if we know that printing or scanning is a big part of what you do, then we could recommend the appropriate third-party tools right away. It doesn't come as a surprise later on when you're doing your pilot, and you realize, oh, this is great, but I never thought about this piece. That's the experience that we can provide. At the end of the day, our goal is to keep your endpoint secure, streamlined, and easy to manage, so it never becomes a bottleneck or the weak link in your virtual workspace strategy. So before we jump into modern day cloud access endpoints or thin clients, let's take a quick look at where this all started and why thin clients, they developed a bad rep. A lot of people I talk to that use thin clients, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, many of them had a bad experience. And maybe that the reason being that thin clients were not ready for prime time. So when thin clients first emerged in 1990s, it was a great concept, a secure, simplified way to access centralized computing resource. The idea was sound, lightweight devices connecting users directly to a centralized server. Great idea, but there was limitations at the time. The internet was not there. Um, you know, there was limitations in bandwidth and infrastructure, software compatibility issues. Even the VDI solutions, as we know them, were not where they are today. So users often ran into speed issues, unsupported drivers or peripherals that didn't work, and software that just didn't behave the way that it needed to. So the user experience was a big part of the early failure of thin clients. On top of that, early thin client models like Wise, the Wise device here, I don't know, some of you may have used something like this. It had limited specs, performance bottlenecks, poor graphics support, was a common thing, which ultimately led to frustration. And a lot of times, actually, the performance was not the thin client was not really the culprit for that. It was more the back end. Maybe there wasn't enough, of a storage on the server, or there was bad bandwidth. But people ultimately put the blame on whatever is closest, and the thin client is there, so they ultimately say this is the reason why my experience is poor. In the 2010s, I would say this began to change, especially as cloud computing was maturing, and then COVID really dramatically sped that up. I mean, there was projects overnight, to go from 100 100 VDIs to thousands of VDIs out there. So that really pushed the thin client market as well to move quicker. Do you recall using some of these devices like the one here, Mohammed?
Yeah, I do
The old
remember that.
Dell-wise,
And I do
EOware.
remember what happened to them in December. Was it 2022 or 2021? I forgot. When there was a massive cybersecurity breach on these devices. I keep going back to cybersecurity. That's the only thing I know. But with what happened, they had a massive breach, and at that time, because of their deployment in multiple universities,
Mm,
many of the universities in New had to struggle for weeks because of that. It was December, I guess 2022. I'm not sure. I think it's 2022. You can look it up. But I do remember also the performance challenges that came with. People had big hopes because they were elegant. They got the right drivers. With the acquisition of Dell, they managed to merge them into the management systems, uh, but it didn't come without a price to pay, honestly.
yeah. And that's the other thing is not all Linux-based operating system are equal. Um,
Correct.
there's a lot of different flavors. There's a lot of companies that focus on operating systems or thin client-based operating systems. And I can tell you, not everybody has the same approach to security. Um, so that's important. That's also an important factor when you're considering, which operating system to use.
Yeah, honestly, Omar, probably you're the expert here. I see customers struggle actually. They either go with the easiest option available I'll just go with Dell Wise and HP. It's a known name, but they don't really think it through. They don't look at what the main objective of why you want to move to thin clients, what kind of use cases you want to serve. So, do you have guidelines of how to uh, come
Yeah.
up with the right solution?
Yeah. I mean, for us, we look at all aspects, what is your
Mhm.
intent, what applications, we make sure we go through the list of all the peripherals that you have, just to make sure that you have what you need. Also, we look at the future. Like, for example, right now, a lot of people are moving from traditional VDI solutions like Citrix or VMware, which is now Omnissa. They're
Mhm.
moving to Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yes.
But Azure Virtual Desktop is not as mature. I mean, it could save you in costs, but you lose out on certain aspects.
Mm.
Um, so we weigh the pros and cons. Also Citrix acquired Unicon. So with
Yes.
Unicon's acquisition, you have a little bit more value. Is it enough value for your business to stay on Citrix or move to Azure Virtual Desktop? Sometimes it's there's a 50-50 chance. In 3 years I'm going to move to this. So you got to take that into consideration. And then we look at um, we tend to propose vendors that are specialists. Okay, Dell and HP, they're great at manufacturing hardware, but they've never been the leaders when it comes to software. They've bought some companies, like for example, Dell Wise was purchased by or Wise was purchased by Dell. But can we say that it's the best operating system out there? Um, it depends. It depends what you're going to use it for. But there are certainly companies that are true specialists. Some of them, they say we only focus on the operating system. Some of them can support x86 devices. Some of them can support Raspberry Pi devices. So it really depends on what you're doing. So that's kind of what we do as an initial step. And we've done this with Distilogic clients. We do that assessment early on. But it takes two to tango, as they say. So the client also has to be willing to take some time and really reflect, for it to be for the solution to be appropriate. Sometimes, we have clients, unfortunately, that are not willing to be patient through the process, or maybe they feel like it's too much work, so they opt for an easy solution. Sometimes it's a partner that we're working with. We've seen a lot of times, like we go and we support a partner with a proper solution, and then the competitor, they just threw in some Windows embedded devices because Windows is easy and the client is familiar with it, and there's no pain. But then when you explain to the client, okay, here's the benefit you get from this, Windows IoT versus this Linux-based operating system, then they can really see, the advantages and disadvantages of both solutions. It really depends also on the complexity of the environment, what we promote. So if you have a super complex environment, we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very surgical about what solution to place where. And sometimes it could even be a hybrid environment because the benefits you get from one solution, you don't want to lose out on those benefits. So you segment your environment, to support that. And then specific use cases. For instance, people that use AutoCAD or very complex, high graphic, they need 6 monitors. Maybe those users, get a different type of operating system, a different type of solution.
And I like how you guys got that TCD like in the middle of an ecosystem of technologies that address challenges that come with specific use cases. For example, when people need to deal with specific card readers, challenges with USB redirection, and certain like peripherals or multi-use type of peripherals. You got everything for that. So which means that there has to be some deep dive discussion with the customer first to really benefit or get true value of what TCD offers. But you guys have a great ecosystem of technologies that I think address every use case I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the objective with the Incline Direct is you have a true advisor that is guiding you throughout. I'm going to skip the slide. I mean, obviously, the things have changed. We've really improved. And I think thin clients really make sense when you have cloud or virtual workspaces. One thing I wanted to bring up, and it's good that we have you, Mohammed, is that July 2024 CrowdStrike incident. So I'm sure you saw a lot of these kind of in like the image we have here.
Yeah,
And that was an attack on the endpoints through an upgrade, right?
yeah,
Um, so what was the common thread across all those outages was Windows. And what
correct.
triggered the issue, it was a faulty update pushed to the devices running CrowdStrike Falcon.
Yeah,
And many of the devices were kiosks. So you saw this in airports, you saw this in factories, you saw this in retail. Um, and at the end of the day, these devices, they don't run very complicated applications locally, right? A lot of
right.
times they're running probably something connecting to the cloud. Um, the question is, did they have to run, Windows at all? And if they hadn't been running Windows, would we have had this issue? And the answer is no.
Mm.
Um, but of course, some people might argue, uh, the testing or the patching process should have been different. They should have had a process because if you tested this release, you would have, um, you wouldn't have had the issue. But um, things move very fast in the real world, right? So
Right,
um, all it takes is one update, and things are down, across the globe. Um,
right.
so this brings me to a key point. Why thin clients for VDI or DaaS or browser, based access should be dumb by design. I mentioned dumb earlier, but it really, the endpoint, um, should be dumb. It shouldn't have, the ability to do anything. And this is an oxymoron because we're moving towards an AI world where everything is becoming smarter. But has the endpoint that's supposed to give you access has changed? it's only the gateway to the cloud. And if that's all it's doing, it doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, the simpler it is, the safer it becomes. And actually, ideally, it shouldn't even, we shouldn't even need endpoint security tools like CrowdStrike on the endpoints. If they're read-only operating system hardened, and it should be minimal updates. So whenever we deploy with clients, it's only those updates for Citrix, getting the latest Citrix client or the latest Omnissa or AVD client. Those are really the main things that we're updating. We're not talking about patch Tuesdays or OS level disruptions. So yeah, I'll move on to the next slide. And this is why you want to choose Think Client Direct. I hope we've given enough reasons for that. But we are endpoint specialists. We do optimize the solutions based on the client needs. We don't just in my I guess history, I worked on the vendor side as well. And while the vendors all have good solutions, sometimes when you're talking directly to a vendor, a solution may not be ideal, but the salesperson is never going to tell you that. They're always trying to fit their solution to you. And sometimes it just doesn't fit. That puzzle piece is not, the right puzzle piece. And and this is why I like being on the TCD side now, is that I have multiple options to work with, and I can be transparent with the client. So when we built a solution, it's all optimized for the client, and we may have to try a couple of different solutions with the client, but at least we're moving in the right direction. And then we have the hardware that is cost effective and that we try to future proof for the client. Our approach is OS agnostic. Again, we work with a multitude of operating systems, and we try to choose the best one for your needs. These are some of the ones listed. There's others that are not listed here as well. Security is a big piece. It's really our top priority in everything we deliver. Most of the clients that we talk to, their number one concern is security. Security trumps everything. So our goal is to provide robust, comprehensive protections right out of the box. For Linux-based deployments, again, we offer a read-only operating system locked down to minimize risk and prevent unauthorized changes. And for Windows environments, whether you're using Windows 11 or Windows 11 IoT, hopefully you are moving from Windows 10 because support is ending. And that may be a good reason to consider the right operating system to move to. But with Windows 11 and Windows 11 IoT, we focus on reducing the attack surface. What we do is we harden the image and implement tighter controls across the systems. We do work with some vendors that do specialize in this. And in either case, the result is a secure, stable endpoint designed specifically for accessing cloud workspaces without unnecessary exposure. And then the last thing is we want to reduce the IT overhead. So we want support to have an easier time. We want to save time, energy, and cost to your support team. We also have a lot of collaborations. Excuse me. And through our collaborations, we're able to optimize the key workflows like printing, scanning, authentication, multimedia to deliver smooth, responsive experience to the users. We also integrate with advanced tools from top-tier partners to monitor and enhance endpoint management. And we keep systems secure. So, for example, we work with Liquidware to do an assessment. So we, even prior to telling you which device or what are the specs on the device that you need, we can run an agent on all of your endpoints and figure out exactly what you need. And actually, this might even help if you're transitioning to VDI to get exactly what you need for VDI and what to look out for. And actually, through this process, when we do the assessments, oftentimes we're finding that people didn't know that these applications were running, or they're paying for these extra applications. So it can have a lot of benefits. And actually, this service that we do for the assessment, we do it at no cost. So it's very interesting if it's not something that you've done before. So we leverage this network of partners, and we know what each one has an expertise in. So we bring in the right players to move towards the correct solution. And then the support is a big part of what we do. We want to support you, end to end, so that you have the right backing to achieve success. POCs in endpoint projects, POCs are the biggest thing. So you want to have, you need to have good support during that proof of concept. Once the solution in place, it's pretty, everything just works. But it's really that POC process, which is the painful process of making things work. And that's where we could save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration. So let's talk about the TCD portfolio. Currently, we have 4 different models. We have the 1 series. I would say the 1 series is 90% of what we usually go for. I have a device right here with me. So we can configure the 1 series in a few different ways, but ultimately it's a quad-core processor. This is the top end of a fanless processor you can get. We use Intel. Intel processors. And you could we have adapters, but this can support 3 4K monitors. It supports Wi-Fi. Everything you need to do what you need for like 95% of the cases. Series 2 is a device. It's got additional peripherals. So if you have if you need serial ports, sorry, my background is not allowing me to show. Okay, so if you need like the old serial ports or the old PS2, we could provide you with a Series 2 to be able to handle that. And then we have the I series. So I is for industrial. This can and it can handle higher and lower temperatures. This is very much for a warehouse or for industrial type of environment. And finally, we have the all-in-one. So if you're interested in having everything in one, like the monitor and the thin client being one, you reduce a little bit of clutter with cables, then all-in-one could be an interesting thing. That said, we do provide a Visa mount. We don't charge anything for our Visa mounts, and you can put this right in the back of a monitor, and you could have something that looks like an all-in-one, but it's actually your thin clients attached. With regards to hardware, as I mentioned, we can we could do a configuration that makes sense for you. We could even go to the extent of putting your brand there. So if you want your company logo or something, I mean, we do require certain volumes for that, but we can make personalizations. And if there's something that we don't have, we will go out there and get it for you. Recently, we had with Distilogics actually a requirement for tablets, and the client said, "I need this, this, and this." We took those requirements and we were able to source the tablets for the client. These Windows tablets that are rugged. So we can look at specific requirements and assist in that sense. These devices, anyone can test them. We offer a 45-day trial. Depending on where you are, we will ship the device to you at our cost. You try it for 45 days. If you like it, you keep it. If you don't like it, you return it to us. So it's very simple, no pressure kind of way to evaluate. We do have a brief call with you just to know what operating system to place on the device prior to shipping it to you. So we try to evaluate your client, your environment, and we figure out, that if the solution is appropriate, and then also like what operating system makes sense for you, and then we ship you the device. Before we sell any kind of hardware, so our intent is not just to sell as much hardware as we can. Yes, we will, we that's what we do for a living, but we also have a solution, or we have several solutions for making the most of the device or hardwares that you have right now. So if you have PCs laying around that have i3, i5, i7, more than likely you might be able to get more life out of them. They might not be the fanless device that's very efficient energy-wise, because a thin client does consume a tenth of the energy that a PC would consume. While you're not going to get those benefits by repurposing your device and changing the operating system, you will get a lot of the benefits that thin clients can provide. It makes it much easier to manage. It'll lower your attack surface. You'll have a more hardened operating system. The other thing worth mentioning is Citrix, as I mentioned earlier, has acquired Unicon. So a lot of clients that have Citrix, that are paying for Citrix, in your subscription with Citrix, you probably have access to Unicon, which is an operating system. If you do have that, it may be something worth looking into. It is something that Thin Client Direct has experience supporting. And it's something that we can help you, if you want to run a POC, we can assist you in that. And our hardware, will work perfectly with Unicon. So we can assist you with that as well. Finally, regarding our presence, globally, we are headquartered in the US. We have a warehouse in the US. We work with DistiLogix and Hamid Alayad's team in the Middle East, and we have a warehouse, and we keep stock as well out of Dubai. And we can, when we manufacture, we can ship anywhere across the globe. We recently had a client that has multiple locations. So once they order the devices, we ship them to multiple locations. So we can even help with the logistics behind, getting your devices everywhere. A lot of the bigger clients, that have VDI, they have locations throughout the globe. And some of them procure, through resellers in different countries. This is all something that we can help you in terms of logistics, even keeping up with, when renewals are coming. We can remove a lot of that headache. So that's it for me. I guess this is it's back to you, Slim.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you so much for walking us through that amazing detailed overview. And thank you as well to Mohammed for joining us and added very valuable insights. So to wrap things up, this slide highlights the core benefits of working with Thin Client Direct. So first, we offer flexible solutions. So just like Omar explained, our endpoint technologies are built to adapt a wide range of business needs and environments. Mohammed also highlighted that security will always be a top priority. So everything we deliver is designed to protect your data and reinforce your overall network posture. Our solutions are also future-proof, ready to scale and evolve as your organization grows. So you don't have to worry in that aspect. And most importantly, we take a customer-first approach. So we aim to be a true extension of your IT team, offering guidance, support, and long-term partnership you can count on. So we finally moved to our Q&A session. This is the part where we answer your questions. So feel free to drop the questions if you have any in your mind. We have some right here. So we'll try to keep the answers as short.
So before we jump into the questions, maybe Mohammed has one final point, or he has some views that he wants to share prior to closing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. The only thing I wanted to add is I have to re-emphasize that the endpoint is the end game today, whether it is for cybersecurity purposes or for operational requirements or to simplify your IT infrastructure. management and day-to-day operations. So definitely think clients um, are something that you really want to consider when you think about your next plans. That's the first one. The second point, we're happy with our partnership with Think Client Direct, and we'll be happy to support you as the regional distributor in EMEA. And we do have business development managers with technical background that are happy to support you, and they're close to your time zones. So we have them like spread in the region, and they can be there to support when you need. We do lots of partner empowerment sessions. So we help partners with their sales. We help the sales team. We help the educate the technical team. We help the customers also learn about how to navigate the roads towards the right solution. So thank you so much for having us today, and we're looking forward to work with customers and more customers and partners in the region, and to have that channel thriving from Think Client Direct through us to the partners and local partners to the end customers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again, Mohammed, for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
Mohammed. Yeah. Actually, some of these questions, stick around, Mohammed, just because some of these questions are, some of them are will be directed to you in our Q&A. So I'll start with you, Omar. So the first question is, how does your solution, so the DCD solution, compare to traditional desktop setups in terms of cost and performance? And if we can give like some numbers to lead to provide as an example.
Yeah, I mean, this is very common. I mean, especially in the EMEA region, this comes up, very frequently. Like, how does this even save me costs? Hardware, it's not, this is not where the main cost saving is going to be. Usually your cost saving, you have to think about first off the life of the solution. Okay, when you're talking about physical, or I'm sorry, when you're talking about traditional PCs, you're talking about a device that you refresh every 3 to 5 years. Within clients, because it's a dumb terminal, and if you spec it right from the beginning, you could get double that lifespan. I mean, we have projects that we've done, that the device is being used for over a decade. It's not uncommon to have devices span a decade, as long as you make the right choice in the beginning. So when you look at the cost, okay, you say, oh, a PC is the same price as a thin client, or close, to the same price. Oftentimes you have to realize that the cost over time is much greater with or much greater with the PC. You'll save money, because your thin client is going to last a longer time. You also save energy. If you have the right solution, you also save costs in terms of support issues, and your IT, the IT team that you need. You get your IT team focused on more important priorities. So those are the ways that you can, those are things that you need to look at in addition to just the cost of this device versus the cost of this device.
Absolutely. Clear answer. Thank you, Omar. The second question will be for you, Mohammed. So as a veteran distributor in the EMEA region, so are you seeing increased adoption of thin clients in the Gulf region due to the rise of remote work and energy efficiency mandates?
Yeah, big time. And it's not only because of remote work, because some organizations are asking their employees to go back to the office now. But I see a major transformation how organizations and customers are rebuilding their end user computing strategy. So yeah, people are moving to end user to thin clients at the moment. For multiple reasons. Some of them were mentioned by Omar, like easier management to reduce their exposure to attacks and to for a long time, the long life cycle, a lifetime that they get from these devices. The people want to have the intelligence and the power centralized, easier for the IT team to manage, and they want to make sure that their endpoints are there to just process their access and then provide minimum compute power to run those applications. And this gives a great abilities for remote work. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, that company that has hundreds of employees across the whole region, like from South Africa all the way to Kuwait. And you can imagine when you have 2 or 3 employees in different countries, and you do provide field services, and you provide that kind of IT services, and then you have that mobility and that security and reduced attack surface, and you deliver applications to your employees wherever they are, from a central location. So I see the transformation not only because of remote work, it's a major shift in how they build strategy going forward for end user computing.
And I think also the fact that before, you remember, Mohammed, to build a VDI infrastructure, you have to have, it was so complicated.
Yeah,
Now you can just, quickly through Azure, or through
yes,
Amazon, have, your infrastructure in the cloud. It's very effortless. And some companies that, VDI didn't make sense at all. If you're below 50 users, you couldn't even consider VDI. Now it makes sense at every level.
right.
With solutions like Windows 360 or Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, Amazon Workspaces. I mean, there's so many different ways of going about it, and it's easy now. So there's a big adoption. The other point I wanted to make is a lot of people are looking at compliance. Compliance is also one of the motivating factors for going with endpoints, because it helps you stay compliant, whether it's like those healthcare compliances or government compliances.
Correct.
Yeah, let's make sure not to answer that, because that is actually one of the questions, one of the upcoming questions. Yeah. So first of all, yeah, there's a good point that you mentioned earlier, Omar. You talked about Citrix and Omnissa, and one of the questions is basically that. So are the TCD devices, in your opinion, so are they compatible with, we talked about the fact that they're compatible with Citrix, but are they compatible with Omnissa Horizon and Azure Virtual Desktop and other,
Yeah.
OS or what?
Again, this goes with our future-proof approach. You want to be able to support any kind of VDI. So there are solutions out there, operating systems that only support certain cases of VDI, like maybe they support Omnissa and Citrix, but they don't do AVD quite well. So we make it so that the flexibility is there. The hardware definitely supports any kind of use case, but sometimes on the software side, we have to be careful, and we have to analyze what the client's going to need. Slim, are you there? Okay.
Hi, sorry, my phone went off, so I had
Okay.
to use the computer for a while. Sorry,
Right.
folks, some technical
No problem.
difficulties. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next question. Oh yeah. This was asked last webinar, but it's a common question, so we'll re-answer it. No problem. So can the thin clients, TCD thin clients, support multi-monitor setups and video conferencing tools like Zoom and Teams? I'll let you answer also this one, Omar, and then we'll go back to Mohammed with the next question.
Yeah. So we can. Most of our devices support up to 3 4K monitors. The industrial one, the TCDI, it does 2 at 4K resolution. And we are looking at adding hardware for 4 4K monitors. So hopefully we'll have that in the near future.
Hopefully. Thank you. So next question. So for Mohammed, are the TCD devices, well, this is pretty much a clear answer, but we'll ask it anyways. So are the TCD devices certified or pre-approved for use in any specific EMEA countries, the whole Gulf region, etc.?
Yeah, because TCD, or if I talk specifically about TCD, but this could be general for all of the Think clients in general, especially if you have hardened operating systems. Then yes, they're approved. And the good thing about them is that, like, if you look at the Aramco CCC certificates and requirements, the SAMA requirements and stuff like that, using those, Think clients will tick off multiple of the compliance controls that are needed, and that's why I see a growing demand on Think clients in general to replace the existing PCs and laptops. It's not only driven by compliance. As I said, the operational requirements, like to simplify your operational requirements, is a huge thing today. And to have a management platform that, like the ones that are offered by TCD, that help you to centrally manage devices, upgrade their firmware, or, turn them off and on, and the ease of management, ease of deployment is also a huge thing. The Think clients today, they come with good compute power that help you even with heavy applications such as video conferencing, but yet you don't have to go with those massive compute powers that you get from laptops and PCs and worry about their operation, their lifetime and support and their endpoint protection tools and AVs and that kind of stuff. So this is, as I said, there is a major shift in how these organizations are building their strategies going forward. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you, Mohammed. So next question, Omar, this one is for you. So, this is a technical one. How do you handle firmware or OS updates across all the Think clients? So how do Think clients, we talk about the aspect of scalability and all that. So how do TCD Think clients handle that?
Yeah, depending on the operating system, usually there's a management tool, and updates are done through those management tools, and they're very efficient. Usually in terms of how they do that. To avoid clogging up the bandwidth. And the nice thing, if you are using a Linux-based operating system, usually those updates are very, very small. So it's usually quite quick. You can, in most cases, you can configure it to be done at off hours. So it's all manageable. So that's essentially how it's done.
Wonderful. Okay, this question I guess will go for you both. Obviously, Omar can answer in a more general way. Mohammed could perhaps answer it for the Gulf region specifically, as an expert working in that region. So, what industries are seeing the most success with Think clients?
Well, honestly, wherever VDI is used, I mean, traditionally it's healthcare and banking, but we're seeing across the board now. Manufacturing is growing. I mean, call centers has always been there. They're really, I mean, as long as you have a larger workforce, they're spread, they're spread out. And VDI is present, usually it makes sense to have such solutions. And internet and bandwidth is getting better. Before you had like remote areas where it's impossible. Today it's much better. So those companies that have had those limitations are now able to adopt VDI and Think clients.
Yeah. What do you think, Mohammed? Is it the same for the Gulf region?
Yes, I agree with you. Banking and healthcare has always been the biggest when it comes to thin client deployments, but I see in manufacturing, utilities, I see a
Yeah.
huge growth there. Yeah.
And I think in the region, Mohammed, correct me if I'm wrong, but government also is
Government is huge. So I apologize about that. Yes, governments, because the last like 10 to 15 years, there were like massive deployments of VDI, and VDI projects, and now
yeah.
they're moving with thin clients, and yeah, I agree with that.
All right. One last question for you, Mohammed. So, how can companies in EMEA region keep their endpoints secure while following local data privacy laws? So they don't want to break any laws. They want to keep, stay in compliance with these regulations. So how do they do that?
That's a great question. Now, if I take it from the thin client point of view, just by as Omar said, by making that terminal dumb, this takes out a lot of the challenges that you have to deal with. Because as I always say, the endpoint is the end game. And when we talk about endpoints in the traditional like sense, endpoints is anything that runs an operating system. And with endpoint security is where you want to give that operating system the ability to protect itself. As simple as that. So you want to make sure that the operating system is equipped with technology to detect malicious behaviors, deal with fileless attacks, and lots of challenges, scripts, and PowerShell commands, and weird processes, and that kind of stuff. And when you harden the operating system and reduce what you can do with that endpoint, and when you make it read-only endpoint, that takes out lots of the challenges. And then you bring your focus on how can I achieve secure browsing? How can I make sure that data never leaks? How can I make sure that my sensitive information and data is not leaking, especially PIIs, like personally identified information, and which is probably the biggest topic when it comes to data privacy laws, and especially the latest ones like 2 years ago in Saudi and other like countries in the region. So by just having by having thin clients, that takes out lots of the challenges. You still have to do a lot, of course. You have to do a lot with the interface, with the workflow. You have to do a lot with secure browsing. Secure browsing is a big thing today, and you have to make sure that you comply with the privacy controls in the whether it's the European or the California or now the Saudi one. When it comes to what you collect, what kind of data you collect, and what kind of data you process, and what you do with data after you finish processing, whether you flush it or you just keep it. So yeah, that is a lot. But I'll repeat again: just having thin client just takes out a lot of these challenges.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation. One last question, Omar. So, do you have any upcoming partnerships that will enhance, TCD? What TCD brings to the table?
Yeah, and I thought the last question was your last question, so I hope this is really the last question.
No, that was the last question for Mohammed. So this is the last question for you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have a very exciting announcement coming up. We're working with a company that improves the access to your environment, to your workspace. So they specialize in tap and go. So if you have cards, you have badges, you can access your environment within seconds just tapping in, and it's like an SSO type of solution. So all of your passwords for everything that you access throughout your experience as a user is there. So look out for that. I don't want to say too much, but we should be announcing that in the coming week or so, and hopefully we'll have webinars in the future outlining some of these solutions that are quite interesting. So we'll probably be inviting vendors and looking at specific use cases and solutions.
Absolutely.
So one thing I want to mention, since I'm sure you're going to close off, Simon, after this, is the benefit of DistiLogix also. Like, so we are the experts. TCD is the expert on the endpoint side of things, and we can provide advice. But DistiLogix also is a great resource for all types of solutions. So if you're looking at improving your VDI environment and you need user environment management, if you're looking at if you want to know what's really going on in your environment, you need monitoring tools. If you have phones that you want to control, because that's a whole other aspect. Whether we like it or not, people are bringing in phones, and phones are part of what people are using. So if you want to manage those phones, if you have endpoints and you have Windows and it's not VDI, DistiLogix has some solutions there. Typically, what DistiLogix carries is different from what others are carrying. So they usually focus on innovative or very specialized tools. So yeah, definitely worth checking out and having discussion with the DistiLogix team. But again, Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for
having me.
providing all your valuable insight.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you
So
guys for having me. Great webinar presentation. Thanks to everyone. Looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody else who joined. We hope you found it helpful. We tried to cover every possible point about everything, endpoints and think lines and TCD. We've talked also a lot about the Gulf region and about the regulations and the laws. So we hope everything was clear. Anything more to add, Omar, Mohammed? Anything more to that's it.
Thanks. The webinar is recorded, so it will be shared with everyone so that you will.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. One last thing to add from me. So you can book a session with us at any time by visiting thinklinedirect.com/meetings. So you can book a session, discuss with us your needs, and we'll come up with a tailored, unique solution for your case. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.